Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got 7 games for you guys here on Monday night. In this one, we're taking a look at probably the marquee matchup. There's a couple good games, but we got the Suns playing in Golden State. Once again, no Kevin Durant in a return that his team is making to the Golden State Warriors. But we will take a look at all the stuff inside this one. Pretty high total. Also have another game video and our player props up for you, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We are staying hot after a weird night last week. We had 2 good nights to end the week. So we are still pretty hot on those player props. Like and subscribe to that page. Also want you to head to thelines.com. You can check out all of the great written stuff we're putting up there as we come down the stretch here this NBA season. And we have that odds finder tool up there for you guys. You can make sure that you're seeing all the lines available to you from all those US sports books, giving us bets in this NBA season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this slate for everyone and then talk about our game Dubs and Suns.
Yeah, marquee matchup maybe. I'll probably be watching Kings-Bucks in this late window, but sure. We got Jazz +7 at the Heat. Celtics are -12 at the Rockets. Pacers without Halliburton -3 at Pistons. The other game we break down, Wolves were +5 at Hawks. Totals at 245. It opened at 240. Grizzlies in a rematch at Dallas. It's basically a pick'em. Kyrie is questionable. Luka is out. The Bucks are -1 at the Kings here. Another 245 total. Giannis, as we say, questionable. And then Suns +4.5, right about where it opened. The total has been bet down from 240 to 236, with money still kind of coming in on the under. It might go lower. It's a really tough spot now at this point with the line. There is a trend here with the Warriors going under consistently at home, but also with them just winning at home. 9 of their last 10, 8-2 against the spread in that span, and the number 2 defensive rating in that span. And the Suns, you look at their exact different splits on the road, they have the number 2 defensive rating in their last 10 roadies, as well as the number 2 net rating, playing at a pretty slow pace of just 96. Obviously, without KD here, who you mentioned slipped in warmups, it's just baffling to think about that he's going to be out multiple weeks from just a little wet spot on the floor. But yeah, the Suns offense is going to be a little less prolific here. Even with him in there, I mean, their 3-point shooting went way up. Their efficiency went way up. Their pace was actually crazy slow in those first 2 with him on the road. So they went over by sheer efficiency. Previous 6 road games without KD, over in 5 of those, or 6 of the last 7. And you look at their 3-point shooting in the 8 road games before he got there, they're hitting just 9 a game, 33%. I mean, neither CP3 or Book are really going to look for their 3-point shot that much, so it is a lower volume situation. But with Booker, though, I am seeing the totally rounding into healthy form at the same time as getting Kevin Durant in there, and whether that helped his game by getting him more open shots or just kind of lit a fire under him to, whatever KD probably said is like, yo, this is still your offense. Like, I'm going to fit in. And he's just been on a tear with 36 points per game, 60, 50, 80 splits, averaged 30.5 in 2 early meetings against the Warriors. And Steph came back in that second meeting with 50. That game totaled nearly 250 in Phoenix. The Warriors' defense has been elite lately at home, but their offense, as we know, much, much better at home as well. Also, the pace with Steph goes up so much, and he is a one-man over by himself. I actually would lean over if this does get bet down anymore. If you're looking at like a 232 to 35 range, I do think we're going over. But I think the stronger bet is just Warriors to win, or teasing that to the money line, so you get the total more in the direction you want. This is a bit of a revenge spot. It's obviously a contentious rivalry, and they had that weird game, right, where Phoenix's backups beat them by 12 last time out. I think that's more of a motivating factor than anything, and we know the Warriors take care of business at home. So I think we get on the right side of that and just take the home team here rather than the Suns without Durant.
Yeah, full transparency. I already hit the Dubs under at 239.5 because that's what we were talking about when I was going over these lines last night and taking some notes as I get the opportunity to do that when I'm on the West Coast, obviously, and get to stay up later and see all that stuff. And then it got bet down, as was what I thought would happen. And it scares me a little bit because the thing is like, what do you believe in here? Do you believe in the Dubs' ability to have been playing defense as of late and playing a little bit slower at home? Well, I'm sorry, a good amount slower at home than on the road? Or do you correlate the fact that they've been playing slower on the road or at home than on the road lately because in their last 5 road games, Steph was there, or their last 3 road games, Steph was there. Their last 5 home games, Steph was not there, right? So, like, yes, the home is slower and the road is faster, but Steph's been playing at home. Steph not been playing on road. So, right, what do you do with that right there? Because they've had 5 straight unders at home since the All-Star break. Before that overtime win versus Milwaukee, that was kind of crazy. But even that game was going well under until they had a 65-point fourth quarter and 19 points scored in overtime. So even in that fourth quarter 65-point barrage, they still weren't at the total in that game, which was 241. And I think that's why you already saw people start to bet this down. They were playing that game at a 104 pace. The Bucks play at the second fastest pace in the league. The Bucks were awful on offense in that game for most of the game. Obviously, Giannis didn't play, so that's going to be a huge part of it. And that helped the Warriors' defensive stats at home as they had a 101 defensive rating. But I would argue the Bucks had a 101 offensive rating more than the inverse, right? Because of how bad they were on that side, more than really the Dubs were that good. So, if you look at the difference in pace in home and road in general, yeah, they play a little bit faster on the road. It really just comes down to their defensive rating is just that bad on the road at 124 over their last 3 on the road versus the 100 defensive rating that they're playing with at home, right? And they're allowing 127 per game on the road versus like 104 at home right now. So they're getting defensive rebounds. They're averaging 40 defensive rebounds at home in their last 5. They're averaging 28 on the road because they just don't get defensive rebounds. They hemorrhage second chance points. They've also been getting more assists, but that's because Steph is back and they're going to get more assists when Steph is around. The ball keeps flowing even more when he's there. So I really put a little bit more stock in their ability to play defense at home. And I do think in these games, like the thing, once again, when these two teams have faced, the last 2 that they've played in Phoenix, it was like a 97 pace. The last 2 they play in Golden State, it's 103 pace. So they do just play a lot faster when these teams meet in Golden State. But I also think there's something to the idea that there's going to be a little bit of inefficiency in that Phoenix offense. I think losing KD, you've seen what they've done without him and with him, the contrast there, right? Like they went under in 6 of 7, I believe you might have mentioned, before KD arrived. On the road specifically, and then KD comes and they have 2 straight overs because he just makes everything from mid-range. They're still playing at a slow pace on the road with him, but they were just going over because what are you supposed to do when you have 2 of the best wing scorers in 2 of the 5 West in the league in him and Book right now. So, but with him they were scoring. They had 118 offensive rating. Without him, it was down to 110. Their D rating is way better actually on the road than it is at home, maybe because they don't really care about defense when they know they can just score at will at home where their offense is a bit better. They're limiting threes. They're not hitting threes, like you said. 9.4 made over their last 7 rather on the road at 33%. Only allowing 11. I mean, do with that number what you will when you're playing against the Dubs. Like just add at least 2 to what your average is, maybe 3, because the Dubs are not going to probably get below 13 or 14 made 3-pointers. It's just how they get 49% of their points. So that's how they're going to continue to score, because they're going to continue to hoist them from there. So I think the splits that tell you that the Suns play slower on the road, they play way worse offense on the road and much better defense. And then the Dubs just actually play defense at home. 236 still feels kind of high, as these teams have been going under more in Phoenix than they have in Golden State. So it is scary once you get down to 236. And I don't know that I'm going to put any more on this at lower than the 239.5 that I already hit it. But I also don't really feel like having to pick a winner. Although if I had to, I would lean Dubs because of how good they are at home and they have Steph. But once again, they've been decent in clutch, but they needed to come back because of an awful third quarter and beginning to the fourth in that Bucks game. So I just don't know when and where to trust them, even when they're playing good teams. And Phoenix is going to be getting up for this one.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's no Mikal Bridges. And you're looking at Steph, that 50-point game was kind of an anomaly when he's going up against Bridges in 11 games, 23 points per game. He's shooting 34% from 3, which is terrible for Steph, and not getting that many attempts either. up. You talk about limiting the team attempts it makes. A lot of that is just like what Bridges can do. It's why he was in the front of the Defensive Player of the Year discussion last year, is because he's one of the only guys that can check Steph Curry. So, I mean, I'm looking at him kind of going off. I would look at, there's often these bonuses for like Booker and Curry combined points. I think we will see those two going back and forth. Whether that, lifts the entire total so that we are getting into a high scoring game, it's tough to say at 236, but I think it's more advantage Warriors to say like Bridges is no longer in the picture than Wiggins is no longer in the picture. The Warriors, I think, still, Wiggins will be back at some point, but they still have guys to throw at Booker. It's less of a team flow for the Suns. I mean, we're more concerned about the Suns' offense here in terms of getting us over because the Warriors are at home and because they have an elite defensive rating recently at home. So I think it's just another strong check to say if you feel like the total is set competitively here, let's just keep riding the Warriors at home -4 or tease with another game and just get that at even money. But I think they can cover 4 pretty easily if they are firing all cylinders and trying to deliver some revenge to the Suns team.
And maybe they will be. And Draymond's healthy, and so that's going to be crucial as well because he has had some success against DeAndre Ayton, who's been up and down when he's played against the Dubs here and there, and they've been much better inside as of late. And Von Looney, a big part of that is he's getting a lot more time as well, continuing to play above 30 minutes. So we'll see. Definitely, I think it's going to be a fun game. I really think it's either going to be pretty painfully slow compared to what we think, and this game ends in the 2 teens, low 220s. Or it's just I'm completely wrong, and this game just goes off for the 241, 242 total that they would be capable of. But I think we even, like I said, with Steph playing the way he was, I think with that defense playing better, I think they have an opportunity to go under as they should have and almost did without overtime in that game previously at home. So
a lot of movement on the total, and I think we can take advantage of the fact that this one's up to 245. While the Hawks are a scary team to take an under with, especially at home, the Wolves are just not a team that I'm going to trust to consistently get into shootouts by any means. They are coming off that overtime loss to Brooklyn, which is, Brooklyn's just been playing some crazy basketball lately and finding ways to just extend the game, get it high scoring. Previous 3 for the Wolves on the road went way under, including only getting 94 points at Philly, which is definitely not a good sign for your offense. And that was a game where Anthony Edwards had a really good game, right? And he is just their only source of offense right now consistently. Everything else is going to have to flow off teams helping off him. He has not done well at all in his career against Atlanta, though. 14 points per game on 32% shooting. And you look at the status of Rudy Gobert, of course, important. He tweaked his ankle in that Friday loss. He's questionable tonight, probably going to be able to go. It is a bit of a weird revenge factor where they're him and Conley facing Quinn Snyder now for the first time. And it's well, how much is that going to motivate him? How much is Quinn going to have ideas about how to exploit Rudy? But, you need personnel to exploit him. And Atlanta's just not the type of team that you see spreading him out, having multiple people knife into the lane and kick back out and keep it moving and hit threes. They're just one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. And that's where Minnesota's biggest weakness is, right? Is their 4th worst 3-point percentage and dead last in opponents' free throw attempts. Atlanta also very low in terms of their free throw rate. Rudy in his last 4 against Atlanta, since Clint Capella got in there, 12 points per game and not really overwhelming offensively at all in his 28 minutes, but 89 defensive ratings. So it is kind of a bogged down game. Their last meeting, you go back, it's a completely different Wolves team, of course, and so it did go over. But the previous 3, even with the Wolves playing that high-scoring, fast-paced ball, they all went under with Atlanta here. Trae Young, not exactly great numbers, and Trae Young, not great numbers at all against this Jazz team. If you talk about Rudy and Conley at the point of attack, 20 points per game on 30% from 3 his last 5 against the Jazz. So it's cross-conference here as well. There's some support in terms of that. The Wolves are really struggling to win games against the Eastern Conference, so they've gone under in 3 of their last 4 as well against the Eastern Conference. And you look at the last 11 at home for the Hawks against the West, and they've only gotten to 240 thrice, once against Zion, aka the Pelicans when they scored a ton, the Jazz early in the season when they were scoring a ton, and the Lakers when they were scoring and going real fast. And those are all before New Year's. Since New Year's, since 2023, we got a Hawks team that's actually playing good defensive ball at times. They're rampantly inconsistent on both sides. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I think their offense is inconsistent enough, and the Wolves' defense has really been great in that same span. Both these teams have such low free throw rates. Both these teams have such low 3-point clips, percentage hit, that I think there's definitely a path for the under here. And I think 245 is just been bet up too high given Minnesota, given the limitations for both offenses.
Yeah, it's scary. Like we said, it's scary to pick a Hawks under right now. They're really bad on defense, to be honest. In their last 6 at home, they are giving up the second most points per game in the league at 122 there. They're giving up a decent amount of threes, which is definitely how I think Minnesota needs to continue to score. Like you said, it's an offense that is predicated on Anthony Edwards doing everything and then occasionally kicking it out, and kicking it out plenty, and occasionally someone hits a three. Because like you said, right now, if their second option is going to be Vanderbilt or McDaniels rather, cannot shoot from out there. Nice pickup on defense, but yeah, that actually helps the case of what we're talking about. They've been a bit better on defense, but the Timberwolves in their own right, on the road, not good on offense. That's when you look at all these games. Other than playing Sacramento, we normally don't worry about that too much, right? With Sac, anything's possible. They don't play defense anywhere, even at home. And so that was the game that went for 272, I believe. But in a game that they won, which was a little bit of a surprise. But before that, they had 4 on the road before that, where they were averaging 107 a game and limiting teams to 104 per game in that time frame, and they were playing the Clips. It was that West Coast swing, and the Dubs were in there, and the Lakers as well. So teams that can score at home, and teams that did not score that well against this Timberwolves defense at home. One of them was a weird Sunday game, but the other thing about the Hawks is they still can't make threes, which is wild. They still can't really shoot from deep. They don't have enough, and obviously that it's a little bit weird with those two guards. I still think that they're likely to make at least the play-in, if not the playoffs, definitely the play-in and likely the playoffs, because they've just got such an easy schedule too down the stretch. But they're just not doing anything that they need to do to be good. If you look at how their team is based, even when you've got the pick and roll game with Capella not working nearly as well as it has in years past, you can tell that's the case by the way that they're not really able to score in the paint. They're not able to score really around inside 7 to 10 feet at all. Even when they are scoring from there, it's like a Trae Young floater. DeJounte and him it's too much your turn, my turn. They've only both had 25 points. And I know it's a lot between two guys, but this is 2 25-point scorers right here. And they've only had 25 points together at the same time 4 times this season, 20 times, 20 points, 12 times this season. They just don't do it in the same game. And that's a huge problem, which I think you can also look at how this Timberwolves defense that did get a little bit better when you lose D'Lo, you're automatic, and his 25 to 30 minutes, you're already getting way better on defense automatically. And then you add McDaniels and the like, then this team has been way better on defense over their last 8 games. They're in the top 10 in terms of limiting opponent points, limiting opponent field goal percentage, and a lot of stuff around the rim, obviously with Rudy. A little bit better, still giving up so many rebounds and actually stats to opposing centers are the Timberwolves. But, we'll see what Clint Capella can do, especially if Rudy's not in there. But, if Rudy's not in there, I don't think it necessarily helps their offense at all either. As you kind of pointed out, even without him, it doesn't matter. It's Ant's team. There's one style of play that they have. So all this leads me to go 244 is huge. It's terrifying to take an under in a Hawks game. That seems like they screw us a lot of different ways in that sense. But for a Minnesota team that's been much better on defense, I do think it's a fair statement to go under on this one.
Yeah, Naz Reid is a capable backup if he's forced to step in.
If it's a Naz Reid game tonight randomly and you're watching this and you've never seen him play before, you're going to be like, how does this dude not have a bigger contract?
Yeah. He helps their offense probably, but doesn't lose too much defensively. So we'll see. Yeah, you kind of expect Rudy to play, but yeah, you mentioned the struggles with Trae and DeJounte, and it's kind of manifesting in clutch time too. Atlanta has a horrific rating right now, 97 offensive rating in their last 6 clutch games, -30 in the net there. Minnesota a top defensive rating at just 100 in that same span, playing at a 95 pace. So if you do think the +5, we're going to be around there or lower, like Minnesota's going to cover, I don't really see a ton of points flowing down the stretch. And that's one way that the Hawks do go over is they give up the third most fourth quarter points per game. But Minnesota's not really a team you expect to just light them up continuously. And maybe they'll be able to keep continuing to put the clamps down here. And Bogdan Bogdanovic, we did not mention, is very much questionable with back pain. Yeah. And that, the Hawks' second unit is not going to be lighting anybody up either without him. He's driving that unit. So that's another factor to watch here on the injury report. And just continue to watch the Quinn Snyder era. They're playing at a little bit of a slower pace here. They're only 3-4 straight up, about dead even to the over and under. And recently, their games are averaging about 240 at home. So while we say it's scary, really the numbers indicate Minnesota's a below average scoring team, and 240 is what we're averaging. So I do think we can take.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The average, even when you look at some of these like monster totals that Atlanta's been getting, a lot of them are under 244, and even in Atlanta as well. Like they on the road they play less defense even. But yeah, a lot of these totals at home over there. You look at their last like 5. Interestingly, the highest scoring one was with Cleveland, and then they had a game against Brooklyn. But then there's like 4 others in there with plenty of fast paced teams, including the Blazers that the Pacers. The Hawks are still going under. So, Nate, let's go ahead and get into your first NBA play a prop for tonight.
Yeah, I'm going with Tyus Jones, which is basically just a vote of confidence in Memphis's offense and a vote of no confidence in Dallas defense. As we know, in 12 games since acquiring Kyrie, a 121 defensive rating and allowing the second most assists per game to point guard, second most assists per game overall as well. And Jones is a guy who takes care of the ball and gets dimes. He had the best assist to turnover ratio of all time last season and just didn't get the opportunity to play that consistently, but he was a big reason why Memphis kept winning when Ja was out. In 4 since Ja's suspension now, 18.5 points, 9 assists. He does have a double-double in 3 of 4, including the recent meeting at home against Dallas just 2 days ago here. He also got full minutes against Dallas in the 2021 season. When Ja was out, averaged 7.5 assists in those 2 starts. He put up, 16, 6, and 7 in an ugly 97-90 game where the Grizz hit only 9 threes, where they had a worst assist. They had more turnovers than assists. And that's the big difference we're talking about here. Dallas used to be a stifling defense, a really slow-paced team. Luka's not playing, so they're not going to be as slow-paced. You're going to talk about Kyrie and maybe Jaden Hardy seeing a lot more run here. Jaden Hardy, by the way, a guy to watch for his props when those do come out because he's been lighting it up, and certainly if Kyrie's out, he will light it up again. But I'm looking at Jones over 7.5 assists, not the best odds. You get great odds if you go 8.5 assists or go one more and take a double-double. He's not a lock to score 10 points, but I think against Dallas he can. He's hitting 2.5 threes at 42% in these 4, by the way. So he could score. A double-double is plus 260 at FanDuel, and that juice is appealing here. Like I said, he just had a double-double against Dallas, and we're in Dallas where I feel like it's just going to be a high-scoring kind of stat-heavy game.
Yeah, you want Kyrie to play in this game for this for sure. It's just so helpful for the pace and for the amount of points that we can expect in it. So I would keep an eye on that as well. But you're still getting good odds for a guy that you can depend on to get the minutes, to be the starter, to get the usage, to have the ball in his hands. And because the fact that they don't have anybody to break down the defense, they kind of need to pass the ball well and to run offense. And that's going to be the Tyus Jones Memphis Grizzlies until we see Ja back. So yeah, I think he's good to target for a bit. I'm going to go under here on a guy who is playing against the Jazz. It's Bam Adebayo, 29.5 points and rebounds. Under that is minus 106 on FanDuel. Interestingly, you've really got to toggle the stats if you're going to look at how Utah defends centers, because if you only look at how they've done on the season, Walker Kessler, the incredible rook who might already be better at defending the rim than Rudy Gobert, who he was traded for, he wasn't getting minutes up until month and a half, 2 months ago, he was getting 20 minutes a game. They were the worst team at guarding centers because Kelly Olynyk was playing nearly 30 minutes every night. They were the worst team at defending centers, limiting them to rebounds, points, whatever. And then you toggle those stats and you filter it to the last 15 games, let's say, right? They're number one in limiting points, number one in limiting rebounds. It's Walker Kessler time, right? And he's been playing 30 plus minutes in that time frame, and might have had a case for Defensive Player of the Year if he was getting minutes all year and was able to put up better totals. But for Bam, he also puts up fewer points and rebounds at home. His totals at home end up at for this end get you to about 28, not the 29, but not quite the 29 and a half. And that's against better comp. When he did play Utah last time, he had 32 and 8 in Utah in 36 minutes. He needed 13 free throw attempts, and Walker Kessler also played 26 minutes as opposed to the 32 that you should expect him to continue to get. And in terms of limiting free throws as well, he needed free throws a ton back then, but he needed 13 attempts to get the 11 points to get him that over that prop. But then, like I said, Walker Kessler wasn't in there. Over their last 8 games, they're actually in the top 8 in limiting free throw attempts to their opponent because of that. So Bam's also been taking a bit of a turn for the worse in the last 10 games. And if you look at who he's played, he's only had one game that he wasn't playing against a pretty good interior defense. And that was against Charlotte. And in that game, he still played poorly and had 14 points and 6 boards, probably because they just always kind of seem to play poorly against Charlotte. But I think, if you look at his averages, it's at 18 points and 6 boards over his last 10 games. And like I said, playing similar, down low competition like Cleveland, New York, Philly, Orlando, all teams that have big guys that can stop what, Bam wants to do as a slightly undersized center anyway. So I think with the size of Kessler in there, that there's going to be some trouble for him. And he and Markkanen have been playing pretty well down low.
The Jazz have been frustrating lately, but they've spiked in terms of some great defensive performances. I mean, they also went crazy poor defense in Orlando and 2 against the Thunder, but otherwise there's a lot of 106 defensive ratings for the game here, and some of the top rebounding numbers in their last 10 as well. So there's definitely an argument here for the under in this game and for it just being kind of a mucked up game where, there's not a lot of points and rebounds to go around, where Bam is struggling to board up against that big front court, or even winds up in foul trouble against Markkanen. I'd like it here. I'm going with the real scary under here in a game with a 244 total that we're talking about, Kings-Bucks. But De'Aaron Fox, I don't know if he's 100%. I mean, he's come back from that hamstring sprain. He did drop 33 against the Clips in another ridiculous game between those two teams. But since then, he's really averaging about 20 points per game with a poor 106 offensive rating, and it's against Jrue Holiday, who has really given him a lot of trouble. In 10 career games, 16 points, 6.5 assists, 3.5 turnovers against the Bucks. He's only gotten to 20 points in 2 of those games. I mean, granted, 2 of his last 3, but the inefficiency is troubling. In his last 6 against Holiday and the Bucks, 19 points per game on 35% field goal shooting is good for an 87 offensive rating. He's only shooting 23% from deep too since coming back from that hammy issue, and I think it's going to affect his step back game, his perimeter game. And then on the interior here, you have Brook Lopez, who is fast coming on as maybe the defensive player of the year, forcing people's hands when he gets 9 blocks in a game. So it might be hard for Fox to get it going on the interior, on the perimeter. He's got Holiday and Milwaukee, which is allowing the fewest assists to point guards all season and has just been lights out defensively lately. So 25.5 points, or tack on 7 assists to give yourself some breathing room, 32.5 points assists. I think there's a world where he gets, 25, 26 points, but does not get you there with the dimes.
Man, yeah, I mean, it's terrifying with a 244.5 total. Might I guess that you are suggesting there's going to be an under in that game? Can you see a world where this game goes above 244 with De'Aaron Fox not having a lights out game?
I would take the under, yeah. If I was going to dive into the stats a little bit more with this, I think Giannis is kind of questionable, so I didn't really want to look at the game, but I think it's a little high given how good the Bucks have been defensively.
and how stagnant they might be on offense without Giannis the way they were against that Dubs team at home. Much better defensively at home, the Dubs, than the Kings are. But either way, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm looking for the unders. I would throw the assists in there too. It feels kind of high, but the 26 points is not a bad take on this one if Drew Holiday is going to be all over him. I wonder if Drew's going to be, going a little harder on offense. I don't know how that'll affect his defense. I don't know. He's pretty good no matter what he's doing. So I like it not for him there. So let's finish things off here with KJ Martin. You kind of turned me on to this pick, and I kind of just keep liking it more and more. 12.5 points is fine. 17.5 boards, also good for him. I'm sorry, 17.5 points and boards combined for him. The Celtics are kind of weak in terms of allowing rebounds to power forwards, somewhat unsurprisingly, as like they really have like a center on the floor who boxes out between Al and Big Rob Will when he's out there, who's been struggling a bit as late as well. So in his last 9, though, for Kenyon Martin Jr., aka KJ Martin, 16 points a game, 5.5 boards, 59% from the field. He's got an 18% usage, and he's playing 32 minutes. But even though the usage isn't that high, I think the reason that he does so well and actually pretty well against Boston for him, in his last 4 versus Boston as a member of the Rockets, 13.5 points a game, 4 boards, and that's just in 27 minutes in those situations. And like I said, Boston's allowing the most rebounds per game to opposing power forwards over their last 7 games and over their last 15 games. But the reason is how KJ Martin scores. He scores off of second chance points, attacking the rim, even getting out in the fast break after getting rebounds. And the Rockets over their last 6 have actually been the best offensive rebounding team in the league. The Celtics have been in the bottom half of the league in terms of defensive rebounding. The Celtics have been bottom half of the league in terms of giving up fast break points. The Rockets are second in fast break points because I think they know if they have to set up an offense, they're screwed and they're not going to score. So get those young athletes out into space and in the fast break and transition. So I think that how hard is Boston really going to be trying in a game they're favored by 13 points at home, where they've at least got the 2 seed locked, and I know they're chasing the 1 seed, but they're probably going to be able to wrap this thing up. I wouldn't even really feel great about them covering, although they probably will. I don't want to have to sweat that out. I'd just take KJ Martin to be able to get some points tonight.
No, yeah, I think Boston has had a target on their backs for months now, and they're just starting to not be able to live up to it. I would not take them to cover here in Houston, but yeah, and I would expect that to kind of light a fire for some of these young guys like KJ Martin. Also, Rob Williams is probably not going to play. Al Horford does not play much in these spots when they're playing a team that they should be able to beat regardless. So I'm calling it tonight. KJ Martin's going to posterize Mike Muscala at least once. It's going to happen. Mike Muscala has not been getting out the way. And when you said attack the rim, I just saw it in my mind. He's going to jump over him and dunk on his head.
And then Muscala will come down and hit a wing 3, and it'll be all good for him. So that's all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Check out the other couple game videos we have up for you tonight as well on this 7-game slate. And until we see you next, happy betting.